When I was in college, one of the very first favorite professors I had said to me, a problem cannot be resolved until it is defined. And that has long stuck with me. And as I have transitioned from the ready-to-wear world to the home sewing industry, what I've learned about fit is that many of us just haven't ever defined it. So let's define it. And I'm going to define it for you because so many of you, as I've taught classes all over, I've said to you, what is fit? And you've said to me, oh, it's comfort. Oh, it's this. Well, it's more than just emotional. It really is and can have a clear definition to it. So I'm going to define fit for you as when the length, circumference, and depth of the garment matches the length, circumference, and depth of my body. My body is not changeable. It's the fabric and the pattern that is the one that needs to be changed. So let's just say that again, and I'm going to put up some letters to help us remember. It is when the length, and this is going to be really easy to remember because it so happens to coincide with LCD, liquid crystal display. But it's going to be for us, length, circumference, and depth. It is when the length, circumference, and depth of my garment matches the length, circumference, and depth of me. Now, we're going to go over and clearly explain what each one is, and then you'll know that whenever you see a wrinkle, you'll ask yourself, is it length, is it circumference, is it depth? And as I go through and fit my garment, I only have those three options, and those three options will solve every wrinkle I have. So let's first define length. Length is up and downs. Anything that can go up and down, we're going to define as a length. Our body has three lengths. Let's look at this and see what they are. And they are base of the neck to bust, bust to waist, and waist to hip. Those lengths, all they do is go up and down. They're like little elevators. If the bust point is wrong, it's either too low or too high, and the whole garment has to go up and down. If the waist is too high and too low, same thing, and same with the hip. So there are three lengths that we're going to worry about. It's important to deal with lengths because there's no way a manufacturer or a pattern maker can make one pattern that's going to be the correct lengths for everybody out there. So once we get that garment, it's important that we recognize to move the bust point in the right place, to get the waist where it matches and aligns to our body, and the same with the hip line. We're going to move into circumference. And what we know about circumference is sizing. And it's really how we pick out a garment. And what's interesting is even though it's important in our garments to have length, circumference, and depth, we only pick a garment out by circumference. Circumference is our sizing. For instance, in Europe, 40 inches means 40 inches, a size 40 means 40 inches. But here in the US, we take that 40 inches and we interpret it to another number, 6, 12, 8. And so those numbers really become very meaningless to us because we simply, they're not a consistent number and everybody interprets them differently. So if we could get into our mind what we like in number of inches. If I have a favorite blouse, I want to measure that blouse. How many inches is that blouse at the bust line? How many inches is it at the waistline? That way, when we measure our garments or our circumference, it has all of our ease built into the garment and into those numbers, and we'll know exactly what we like. On today, in many of our patterns, it only has the body measurements on the back. And that's okay, but once you get inside the tissue, measure those circumferences to make sure we like them. Circumference can go up and down with our pattern sizes. So if we need more, we move into a larger size. And if we need less, we move into a smaller size. But circumference is the garment around. In my experience, our biggest hole, our biggest problem is depth. And I've heard many women say to me, I quilt because I don't get depth. I've never made a quilt that doesn't fit, and I get length and I get circumference, but it's that depth that I just can't get. And what I want to teach and show you this morning is that depth is angular. And anytime I have a length problem or a circumference problem that's not solved by either one of those, then it's going to be depth. In other words, length is the same all the way across. I have to have the same fix. Circumference is around. But depth is angular. So I'm going to take you through and walk you through a couple of examples of depth so that we can really start to understand it clearly. Depth is darting, and anytime I have a darting, then that's a depth issue. Let's first look at this white blouse. And if I look at the side of this blouse, I'll see some wrinkles that come in around the armhole. The first thing is that the shoulder seam is a dart. It's two angled lines that come together. A lot of times we just don't think of that. But in fact it is. So anytime I have wrinkles around there, I can simply pick up the angle of the dart and increase the size of the shoulder seam. I wouldn't change the neckline, I'd simply change the shoulder seam right there and then taper to nothing. And you can see that cleans up all those darts right in that area. I still have angular wrinkles in this area, and that's because this garment doesn't have a bust dart. And you can see that if I come in and put a bust dart, it also cleans up all those areas. If I measure the body in the middle, from base of the neck over the bust to the waist, I'll get measurement A. If I measure it from the shoulder seam to the waist, I get measurement B. Measurement A is always going to be longer than B because of my bumps in the middle of my chest. I don't have those at the side. So the difference between A and B and how I accomplish that with fabric is darting. I've got a shoulder dart, I've got a bust dart, and it's their responsibility, the two of them, to make sure that that side measurement is equal to my body. Sometimes that means making a dart a little bit larger. Sometimes that means releasing it and letting it go because it's pulled up too much. So the darts that I'm going to find in my garment are the shoulder seam, the bust dart. There's a terminology called swayback, and there's many times if I look at this garment that I'll see wrinkles, and wrinkles identify that there's some type of problem. And my goal is to figure out how to eliminate those wrinkles. And if you'll look at a wrinkle and say to yourself, okay, is it length, circumference, or depth? If you guess the wrong one, you've only got two other choices, so this isn't going to take you 40 years to solve. I've just got to say, okay, let's say this is length. And if I take up the garment the same amount all the way across, you can see I still have those wrinkles. It didn't resolve it because it's not a length issue. Then if I say circumference and I try to take it in at the side seams, you can see, oh gosh, they only get worse, so that must not be the problem. Then I know that darting, and somewhere I need a dart. And a dart, in this particular, this is a little swayback issue. I can take it here. Notice it solves a problem, and I can taper to nothing at the side seam because the darts don't physically have to be actually stitched. They can be part of the garment, which is why I make a muslin. A muslin is just a trial run to see if the garment's going to work for me. And it's mainly to see if those lengths, circumference, and depths are correct for my body. They're not personality. Nobody ever says, I just really want my bust point at my waistline. It really is rules of patterns and the way things should be over and over. So I'm going to take and stitch this out in my trial garment. And then you can see that I've picked that up and it hangs beautiful in the back now, and it's eliminated those wrinkles. We can always see the wrinkles. If you don't have a three-way mirror, I can use a little hand mirror, and I can use it in response to like my big bathroom mirror. I don't want to turn because then the wrinkles change, but if I'll hold that hand mirror so I can see the back, the only wrinkles that there are going to be in the back are the angle of the shoulder, which will fall in here, and then of course the waistline. Those are really simple problems to fix. The ones that are going to be in the front are going to be the angle of the shoulder. It'll cause gap in the armhole here, and as I pick that up, that eliminates that and the bust dart. And between those two, I'll completely clean up the side of that garment as well. So as I'm going through a problem, as I'm going through a garment, as I'm looking at wrinkles, the goal is to eliminate those wrinkles. Someone said to me, you mean that's all draping is getting rid of the wrinkles? It is. That's the goal. And so as I do that, I want to determine, are they length? Are they circumference? Are they depth? Length only goes up and down. Circumference goes in and out. And if I've got a situation where one of those two is not being resolved, then I simply know that there's got to be a dart in there somewhere. There's two kinds of darts. One have internal pivot points and are actually stitched on the sewing machine. And then there's some that just can end at the side of the seam. So they can literally go like this one would go. It starts at center back, tapers to nothing at the side seam, and because it tapers at the edge of a seam, it doesn't have to be in our finished garment. Length, circumference, depth. Define fit, then we can resolve it. And once we do, we repeat that over and over again to where every garment we do, we can change the styling, we can change the lapels, we can change all those fun things, but keep the length, circumference, and depth consistent to what I know my body is.